Okay, welcome back again. Do keep your questions coming in to our guests as they come directly through to me in the studio, and I get through as many as I possibly can. Now, do keep them short and sharp. That's always much appreciated too. Okay, let's move on to our panel discussion, and this is the Manufacturing Sustainability Forum. Let's welcome all of our guests to the virtual stage. They are Paul Lavoie, who's Chief Manufacturing Officer at the State of Connecticut. We have Ashish Saxena, President, Retail, LNG Manufacturing, Transportation and Technology at Nova Solutions. And we also have Shankar Mukherjee, Vice President, Digital Supply Chain, previously at Schneider Electric. Now, those were some job titles to work through. There we go. Welcome to all of you. How are you? And welcome and joining us here at Manufacturing Digital Live.
Hello, Neil. How are you? Great to be here.
Really good. Thanks ever so much for joining us. We've got a lot to go through over the next 40 minutes or so, lots to discuss. So I'll start with a pretty wide open question for all of you to tackle, and that's breaking down some examples of sustainable manufacturing practices that you feel really reduce environmental impact. I'm sure there's plenty of examples we all pick through. Paul, I'll start with you as I introduce you first. Any particular examples you would want to raise?
Sure. So, in Connecticut, one of the largest cost drivers in our manufacturing sector is really the cost of energy. And so we look at sustainability in our manufacturing sector as one of our key initiatives. And we've got a program that we're working on here in Connecticut, which is we're driving the digital transformation within the manufacturing sector. We're looking at ways that we can drive efficiency within the manufacturing sector to be able to make sure that we're improving the sustainability of our manufacturers. But then when it comes to the environment and environmental concerns, that we're reducing CO2 emissions and reducing energy consumption within the manufacturing sector here. And we received a grant from the Department of Energy for us, one of 7 states to receive this grant, to work on the reduction of CO2 emissions and energy efficiency using smart manufacturing software and quantum computing to be able to do that. So 2 specific examples of how the state of Connecticut is working within our very large manufacturing sector to make sure that we're driving sustainability, but we're also taking a look at how can we reduce CO2 emissions and reduce the environmental impact that our manufacturing sector has here in Connecticut.
Couple of great examples there. Ashish, I'll come to you next.
Hi, Nate. Good morning. Before I go to the example, I think one of the things I want to talk about how the sustainability is defined in the manufacturing. It's a very broad term, and the way I look at it in terms of the 2 aspects: how do you manufacture your products and how do you run the manufacturing process per se defining. That's one aspect of it. Second aspect of it, there's a lot more discussion about what is scope 1, scope 2, scope 3 emissions. So I just want to give you a little bit of our audience understanding because this concept is a little broader there. And scope 1 is where the manufacturing operations are supposed to be controlled, and you control the emission aspect of it. And scope 2 is where you are buying energy or heat and some of the indirect aspect. And scope 3 is the aspect of your upstream process, whether you are taking a raw material or you are downstream process where you are packaging. So that's the kind of a definition of a scope 1 and scope 3. Scope 3, I thought audience should know before we dive into the examples. The couple of examples comes into my mind is definitely I come from a technology background. One of the manufacturing customers which we worked with it, where they're industrial manufacturers and they have used IoT as a process efficiency. And they have deployed the IoT sensors on the cloud in AWS, which is helping them improve their operational effectiveness, and they are able to monitor their equipment downtime. They are able to manage their energy aspect of it. So that's one example come into mind where the technology is playing the role of the operational effectiveness, and which is leading to the reduction of the downtime and emission carbon footprint. Second comes to example is the chemical manufacturer, where I worked with some time back, where they looked at it in terms of their energy consumption. As you look at it, chemical manufacturers are big consumption of the water and the energy, what they call is the effectiveness and the efficiency of the energy consumption, and they have deployed the technology to manage, monitor their energy consumption. So those are the 2 examples comes to my mind, and of course, as I explained what this whole sustainability aspect is, Neil.
That's an excellent overview and some more great examples. Shankar, if I can come to you last on this one, your particular examples you'd want to raise.
Now, very well said by Paul and Ashish. Like, the first thing we have to do as an organization is to measure scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3. And once we measure, then the next step comes is where do you focus and where you have the maximum possibility of reduction. So based on that data, you look at your factories, which are the highest energy consumers. And for example, if the factory is little old, what you will realize that just putting a simple variable speed drive in front of a motor or a fan, you will be able to reduce the energy consumption by 30% to 50%. Simple thing, but great return on investment. Second thing is all about lean. The less we produce, the less we manufacture, the more we save. So integrating your demand and supply, slowly moving, if possible, from make to stock to make to order will help you reduce your manufacturing footprint. So less inventory means more savings and less CO2 emissions. Those are the two examples I want to share.
Well, if I just pick up on the example of lean manufacturing, it's a target for everyone. It's what everyone wants to do, but it can obviously be quite difficult to achieve. You have to be incredibly well organized. You have to have really good data. How do we go about making that easier into the future? Is that a technology issue? Is that an organization issue? Where do we go with that? Shankar, I'll start with you on that as you raised it. How do we go about achieving that lean manufacturing approach?
Yeah, 3 dimensions that has helped me implement that successfully. Definitely organization first. Second is processes. And third is the tools part of it. So the great advantage we have at this moment is the technology is there to make sure that we are able to orchestrate the lean principles properly. But it is not only going to help with the best-in-class tools. The processes and the organization has to be created in such a way that we are able to achieve the lean principles. It's a mindset change, but it is achievable. And over time, with proper commitment from the top leadership, this is really achievable.
I'll open that up to the rest of the panel. Anything you'd want to add on lean manufacturing and the efforts to reach that?
Yeah, I think, Neil, is right on. You need to start with the organization first, right? You need to have, before you implement any new technology, you need to make sure you have the right mindset. And that involves getting your team members involved and having a lean mindset and understanding on what you have to do every single day to be able to drive that efficiency. So before you introduce technology to make sure that that's going to enable your lean journey, you need to make sure that your team is 100% on board with the journey, because in making sure that you're going to do that, you're going to have a much easier implementation. So you need to take a look at both the organization and the technology, but I'd argue the organization comes first and your team comes first in making sure that you have the knowledge, but more importantly, that right mindset to really think lean. And if you think lean, then you'll be able to drive lean technology throughout your manufacturing floor.
I'll continue extending that question if I can.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Shankar and Paul spoke very nicely. So the way I look at it first is, before we even go with the leadership, we also need to look at the executive sponsorship and culture, because the culture of continuous innovation, culture of continuous improvements makes it very, very important. We all know about Toyota Production System, which is very famous lean processes, which has been deployed and become very famous across the manufacturing world. Second is the team. I will also extend the team concept to the training, because everybody needs a training into the lean concepts, how the lean works, because sometimes it's a structured innovation, a structured continuous improvement. I would extend one more thought around that. And third is the regular measurement and governance, because while you lay out the lean principle and lean processes as one time, whether it is giving you enough, benefit, whether ROI is being, achieved, or how you can continuously manage and monitor is another way to look at it in terms of lean principle. And then the technology comes at the last, because technology is available all the time, but how do you apply, how do you use it is important point. So I would say the executive sponsorship, leadership mindset, the culture plays important important role. And the team training and bringing the team together, and then a continuous monitoring governance is the maybe 5-step process as a lean manufacturing governance, which I've seen in real life in my own long time back in shop floor, and now of course working with several customers.
Yes, I imagine the ideas of culture and change of mindset are going to come up a fair few times during this conversation today. If I could move on to another principle here, and that's about integrating circular economy principles to minimise waste and maximising resource reuse. From all of your experiences, again, it's something that everyone wants to achieve and wants to achieve while still maintaining competitive advantage. How could people go about applying those principles without losing a competitive advantage? Because traditionally, some people may think the two work against each other. And I'll open that up to all three of you, whoever wants to take that first.
I can. Maybe go ahead, Shankar. Go ahead.
So some examples where we have successfully implemented the circular ecosystem, as it is called as an ecosystem, it has to be not only with the parent company, but also with the entire ecosystem of our suppliers and customers. And when we look at the circularity, it has to be thought through from the design to manufacturing to the operation phase of the life cycle. In the design phase, the first thing we should look at is how can we make our products more sustainable. For example, in our industry, we have some products which used to use harmful SF6 gases, but those were eliminated by replacing that just by using pure air. So these are some of the things that we have to do it in the design phase. Second is, can we reduce the size of our product? Because reducing the size itself reduces the waste of it. And there are many advantages when you are making your product more compact. So once you have put all your focus in the design phase, next you move into the manufacturing phase, where leveraging the best-in-class manufacturing, smart manufacturing techniques, we should look at all the angles of where we can reduce waste and reuse recycled material as much as possible. For example, I was hearing about Apple. They reduced the packaging size so much. Now they are able to fit a lot more products in one pallet, which is not only reducing the shipping as well as air shipments. And so just by focusing on very simple principles of making things smaller, putting more in one container, having less logistics cost and CO2 emissions, companies are creating big impact in the circularity. And also when in the operation phase, as Ashish was mentioning, we have a lot of IoT and other data available. Can we make condition-based maintenance and increase the life of our assets that we are using? Because always less is more, and it is going to save more on the CO2 emissions. Those are the examples I wanted to share.
Yeah, in Connecticut, we've got some organizations here that have specific programs around sustainability and reducing their carbon footprint. But another thing that you really need to look at is the introduction of additive manufacturing into the process, right? Subtractive manufacturing creates waste, and it creates, certainly it creates waste that needs to be recycled, but we're seeing a large move towards additive manufacturing, which is then significantly reducing waste, and we're seeing significant lead time improvements as well in generating with additive manufacturing. And we have large aerospace manufacturers here in Connecticut, and we're moving rapidly into the phase of additive manufacturing and driving the sector here around that as well. And then, we have a really interesting company here in Connecticut that's actually making plastic infinitely recyclable. So it actually uses enzymes to break down the plastic to its basic elements, and it allows it to be recyclable and forever. So this is a kind of breakthrough technology. Our motto in Connecticut is innovate or die. So we're innovating in certain ways to certainly protect our economy, but also to make sure that we're being able to reuse the material that we need to use to make the parts that we make. So a couple of programs that we're doing here in Connecticut, and then some innovative companies that are really, I think, breaking through barriers as it relates to, having a circular economy and making sure that we're using and able to recycle 100% of the products that we use.
No, thank you, Paul and Shankar. Fantastic example. I'll just step back and look at it, if we are not in a circular economy, what economy we are in? And we use word called linear economy, right? We make, we use, and we waste. I think that we very use of it. The consumption has been a big component of our GDP. So the mindset is the more consumption is, the more GDP is. Now looking at the sustainability aspect of it, circular economy coming into the play, and what are the components of the circular economy? The way I look at it, there are 3-4 major components of circularity. One is the mindset that you can use the product infinitely, like Paul said, till it becomes recyclable or recycle and you bring it back. The 4 component which comes to my mind in terms of the circularities, one is a circular supply chain. So you use the material and you continue to use. So that's kind of a circular supply chain. Second is the waste recyclement, reuse in the manufacturing process. The third one on the other side, which I want to touch upon, is the product as a service. And I'll give a couple of examples when manufacturers are extending their capability to the consumer and bringing their product as a service. So they can use the product, they can deploy the product, then they can recycle the product. And the last one comes into my mind is the product extension, because you should able to extend the life of the product, and the mindset is, so these are the 4 key component is in my mind comes as a circularity, which is important. We all have to build our mindset, even individual human being, we as a consumer have to accept circularity as important. 2 example comes to my mind. One of them is one manufacturer actually reached out to consumer and they said, can we use a packaging which is not very nice looking, but it is used by a recyclable material, and consumers were very, very okay with it. So their sales actually has gone up when they started using recycled material, though it is little less nice looking, and they were able to sell more products. So bringing consumer into it in your product is very, very important. Second thing is comes to example which I have seen, it is the Philips lighting, which is a public experience where they are using lighting as a service. So they come to you or they install your lighting, they let it use the lifetime of it, they take away and then they recycle the lighting. So lighting as a service, and which can get extended to anything as a product as a service. There is a manufacturing word, automotive companies are looking at a remanufacturing. This is a new word which I have learned recently, is how you remanufacture. You take your old product, you deassemble, you clean it up, and you reuse some of the part of it. So long answer, but I thought it would be a good idea for our viewers to understand what this key component of circularity means. And if we are not circular, what we are. So we are so far linear, and then how are we moving to circular economy, Neil?
There's so many aspects there I could pick apart there we could go into, but I think one key theme there is any section of that involves great innovation. As you said, Paul, innovate or die, which I believe will be one of my quotes of today. Might get it on a mug, send it to you for Christmas. If you haven't already got them, I'm sure someone manufactures them in Connecticut. To innovate properly, a business needs to work together. The procurement operation needs the product design operation. The logistics side needs this. Everyone needs each other. From your advice and many years of experience you all have between you on this panel, how do you go about getting that collaboration between departments to achieve those kind of innovations? What experience do you have of that?
If I can look at it, Neil, in terms of bringing the collaboration is the key. And it's not only in circularity, any initiative you want to do it within the organization, collaboration is important. Now, the way I've looked at it and what I've seen is working collaboration with the procurement organization, design, CTO organization, all they can come together if we keep the end goal in the mind. And that's where the purpose comes into play. The product, what we are standing for, comes into the play. So in the previous, Shankar and Paul spoke about leadership mindset and organizational sponsorship. If we say this is what our design for sustainability goals are, here are what we stand for, and everybody's goal or, given a goal, I think top-down goals does help. So one is the top-down goals, defining the purpose and what sustainability looks like. Third is the real life, Kaizen workshops and work of, bringing together to bring the, it's hard. I know I wouldn't say that, the collaboration is easy. If it would have been easy, we wouldn't be even talking about it. So bringing that perspective, and of course, board and the CXO leadership has to continually talk about in town hall what is important, what they stand for, whatever consumers needs it. Those are the pragmatic way of driving collaboration in my mind. But I'm sure Paul and Shankar has something else to add too.
From my perspective, I don't have a company perspective. So as Connecticut's Chief Manufacturing Officer, I work for the governor, and my job is to grow and support the manufacturing sector here in the state of Connecticut. So that means I need to take all of the players in the Connecticut's manufacturing ecosystem, and I need to bring them together, and I need them to be working really on a couple of important initiatives. So what we did is we put together Connecticut's manufacturing strategic plan. So we have a plan in Connecticut that's based on workforce development, supply chain resiliency, and industry growth that's all built on this platform of innovation. And then what I created is I created a manufacturing cabinet, which takes the president and CEO of each one of the companies that are, or organizations, nonprofit organizations or other government agencies that are working to help grow and support the manufacturing sector. And we sit down and talk about the manufacturing strategic plan, what it is that we're doing to grow and support manufacturing, and how we're all going to work together. I describe it as my job is to knock down the silos and herd the cats. And that's what we're doing, is making sure that we're getting everybody within a state ecosystem working together to make sure that we're supporting our manufacturing sector. And that is in the areas, again, of workforce and supply chain sustainability and resiliency, and continuing to grow our industry, all while we're innovating to be able to do that. So in my unique role, I have the ability to just engage with all of these stakeholders and engage with all of these folks that can help us grow and support our manufacturing sector. So it's a little bit of a different model. Connecticut is the only state with a chief manufacturing officer that works for the governor. So it's a really different model here, but it's been really successful in Connecticut in helping us grow the manufacturing sector.
So, Paul, is it fair to say that you are a chief collaboration officer in the manufacturing ecosystem?
Yeah, that. It would be fair to say that. So communication, collaboration, cooperation is, again, another thing that I'm out there saying that's my role, and that's what I'm doing. I'm the connector. I'm the one that's bringing industry and all of the support organizations together around common objectives, which is to grow the manufacturing sector.
And chief cat herder, as you say, which is quite a task. If we just keep that going for one further answer about that innovation and how we activate that.
So collaboration, sustainability has to be one of the key values of our organization. Once you show that this is one of our key values, and then create all the KPIs and the other things that Ashish was explaining, has to be top down. Once you have done that, you have to train and educate our teams to make sure that sustainability is not only good for the planet or the environment, but it is also good for business. Highlight all the benefits of adopting sustainable practices every time, every quarter, every training, so that it becomes part of your DNA. And what I have seen is it is very good for attracting new talent. So even human resources organizations, when they say that our company is doing so and so for sustainability and how we are committed towards sustainability, it kinds of brings a lot of excitement for new talents to join your company. So sustainability is one thing which is going to bind the entire organization, because all of us are in it and all of us want to do the right thing for our planet. So sustainability has to be a key driver or a value system of your organization.
Where I want to go next is technology, which frankly could be the discussion for the entire show, let alone a section of one panel. But the role of AI, IoT, automation, what place has technology got, and those particular technologies have, in driving sustainability in manufacturing? And again, I'll open that up to all of you.
I can go.
I will go last. I have so much to talk about technology, so I will go last. So Shankar,
okay, I will go first and leave most for you, Ashish and Paul. So when it comes to the technologies, we are right now in a very, very good time where we have the technologies to basically connect, to have the connected devices. Like the devices earlier would be working, but they won't be sharing the data back to the cloud for us to analyze and see what needs to be done. But now we are living in a time of industrial IoT where almost all devices are connected and they are sending valuable information back to the cloud for us to analyze. Now, how do we use that data is the key. Here, what happens is you can use the data, for example, forecast data like weather patterns to see how do you manage with the demand and supply of energy. Can you play around with the weather data to make sure your manufacturing facilities are using the right amount of energy at the right point of time at the right cost, because the energy cost also varies based on the demand and supply. So this is where AI is playing a very big role in helping us to sense a lot of data and take the right decision for us. For example, the data centers, they are using huge amount of data for cooling, but by using the best practices of integrating a lot of data and optimizing it using AI tools, we are able to see at least 25% plus reduction in the energy consumption even in the data center space. So the combination of IoT and AI, along with all the ecosystem that companies have built around cloud, we are right now in a very, very good place where we have the technology, we have the data. Now we have to just put in the best practices on how we use this data to optimize and reduce energy consumption. Over to you, Ashish, Paul.
Yeah, I'll go second because I'll let Ashish go last so he can wax on that as well. You know, it's really interesting. We're starting to see, you know, the influx of big data and a lot of information based on having Internet of Things and AI in the manufacturing sector. And what we're starting to find is that our manufacturing companies are overwhelmed with the data. I'm working with our university system to make sure that they understand that the manufacturing industry is going to need computer science majors and data scientists as much as they are going to need people on the manufacturing floor that are going to be making the changes. So data tells a story, and you need to have somebody that can interpret those stories. And what we're finding is that is the skill that is most lacking in the manufacturing sector, is the ability to be able to analyze the data and to be able to find out what the story that's being told by the data, and then be able to drive the implementation of that for sustainability throughout our organizations and our shop floors. So we're really going to start to see the emergence of the computer science and engineering fields working together to drive sustainability on our manufacturing floors. And we're really looking at, I mean, I think you really need to look at things around, you know, with that data, can we make sure that we have predictable and preventative maintenance rather than, you know, maintenance that's happening when something breaks down. The more that we can keep the machines running, the more that we can keep them running effectively and efficiently allows us to be able to drive sustainability on our shop floors as well. So when we think of, you know, we start to think about Industry 4.0 technologies, AI, we start to think of big data, and we start to think about driving automation, we really need to take a look at how we're going to interpret and read that data to be able to get out of the data, the story that it's telling us, and be able to implement that on our shop floors.
No, wonderful, Paul and Shankar. So I'll go with a little bit of a step back, and this question has brought my memories 25 years back when I was working in a shop floor and I have to implement this SCADA and distributed control system 25 years back. The challenge was there that while the digital systems were there, then SCADA was able to, you know, look at the data, but the final endpoint was pneumatic control. So there was no electronic control. You have to still work on the air controlled valves and etc. And that was a difficult part. And last 25 years, journey has changed and the IoT devices have come, the many other technologies have come. So that's one point of it, that the world has changed since then and technology is playing a significant role in manufacturing. Second point is to refer, there's a McKinsey book called Titanium Economy. It's a beautiful book. I will recommend everybody to read it, which talks about mid-size manufacturing companies into our Midwest area here in US, how they are using technology and their entire shop floor doesn't even look like a shop shop floor. It looks like a fantastic innovation floor because the world has changed. So there's two things I'm saying. One from my personal experience. The second is this book from McKinsey talks about titanium economy. Now coming to the technology world, if you look at it, there are many technologies today available. There is a AI, there is a IoT, there is a data, which Paul and Shankar spoke about, which we call under the technology called Industry 4.0. I'm sure everybody's familiar with the Industry 4.0 technologies. I have recently written an article and transcending into Industry 5.0. So I've said it now, we are transcending into the Industry 5.0, where there are some other new technologies are coming, like human-machine interface. How are you interfacing with the machine? There is a cobot, and robots are coming into the plant where you're able to control the assembly lines. There is a virtual simulation. I think sustainability, there is one technology which we have not spoken much about is about digital simulation and the virtual aspect of it. So you can do the modeling, you can create a prototype by using the digital simulation technology. Like Paul, you touched briefly about additive manufacturing, but I want to just go one step forward and say we can virtually simulate the products and simulation, etc. So technology is all pervasive. Finally, I say that technology can only do so much. There is a change management is needed. There's a training is needed in the shop floor. There's a word of data collection, and once we get the data, how you utilize the data and how do you take action on it. So longer answer, but I'm very excited. So where is technology? And I won't go even there what is the 5G is going to do it in terms of our manufacturing world. Maybe that is left for some other day, because I'm very excited to see how 5G will play, and the network bandwidth and data can even create wonders for our manufacturing operations.
Yes, again, I think that's a whole other panel discussion when we're talking about 5G. And I think, Paul, you summed it up very well in your section there about how data tells a story, and it's how you interpret it. You can have data on data on data, but if you can't understand it and give it a real use, then it's essentially useless. It's just another spreadsheet full of numbers that nobody looks at. So yeah, I definitely like how you describe that. That's a very good way to do it. If we can move on to collaboration with suppliers and stakeholders, what role do they play in achieving sustainability goals, and how do you go about, again, this is another billion-dollar question, how do you go about getting the best out of those stakeholders and those suppliers?
Yeah, if I can go given silence, is that, in terms of, first of all, we talked about circular supply chain. We talked about the impact of the digital end-to-end supply chain aspect of it, Neil. The way we go about working with the suppliers is, one, defining the common goals, rewarding the suppliers for their sustainability. So creating a partner ecosystem. Gone are the days where you keep suppliers at the arm's length and you work on a very transactional relationship. First, I would say that build partner ecosystem or supplier ecosystem in a strategic way so that you are able to bring them into your supply chain and they understand your common goals and you are able to appreciate that. Second is, I would even go about doing it like the way we encourage DEI. We should encourage sustainability as a reward mechanism. If the suppliers are able to show their sustainability goal in a better way, we should be able to reward those suppliers. So that's another one, is a reward. Second is a strategic partnership. And third is, continually evaluating the partner, because suppliers are also doing it. And fourth is, which I think is not being done much, but I would say, create an innovation ecosystem with your suppliers, because your suppliers probably sometimes they don't have enough capital to invest into the areas because they are normally a smaller players. If you can bring them into the innovation ecosystem, help them drive the innovation agenda. That's another thing I can talk about supplier. So I'll stay with the supplier. I'm sure there are other stakeholders like the government and the consumers and the board members, other places. But let's stay with the supplier ecosystem, and I'll have Paul and Shankar add in, and then if we need to come back, we will come back.
One of the things you have to do is you have to have that North Star, right? You have to have your plan for sustainability. And then you should feel very comfortable in sharing that with your suppliers and stakeholders. And if your suppliers and stakeholders are truly interested in serving you and serving you well, they'll coalesce around that vision and coalesce around those goals, as Akshay said. So, it's a story of I at one time was working with a customer, and a customer told me, "You cost me my bonus." And I said, "Why?" And they said, "Well, I didn't meet my performance goals because of your company." And I said, "Well, you tell me what your performance goals are, and I will make them my team's performance goals." So our goals will be mutually aligned so that will never happen again. So when you look at how can you make sure that you align the goals of your suppliers and stakeholders to your goals, all moving towards that North Star, then you're going to have that, everybody working together to make sure that you're achieving your sustainability goals. And again, that requires suppliers and stakeholders that are willing to come to the table and to be able to share in what you're doing and share in your vision as well. And that's here, and here in Connecticut, right? I'll give our example. In Connecticut, we have the governor. So the governor sets what the goals are. And then my job is to make sure that I'm driving the manufacturing sector and giving them the ability to meet the goals, the governor's goals around making sure that we have a carbon neutral Connecticut by 2040 is really the goal. So now I have to figure out in the manufacturing sector how we're going to drive the collaboration and the cooperation within that sector to achieve those goals as well.
Very well said, Paul and Ashish. As organizations are creating their sustainability goals, what we are finding is there is a big dependency on the supplier ecosystem. In some calculations, the scope 3, which is with our suppliers, is going as high as 80% of the emissions that are there in the entire ecosystem. So without our suppliers, we won't be able to achieve our goal. But how do we do it? And that's where, as you said, Paul, Ashish, this common goal has to be created. If we are not able to do it with all suppliers, but start with your top 20% suppliers, because there are a lot of good things big companies are doing in their scope 1 and scope 2 to reduce their own emissions. But how do you take it to your supplier, educate them? What are the best practices that are available? These are the things that have made us successful. Using that, you will be also successful in achieving the goals. And then the second thing comes is creating a reward mechanism, a small kind of a competition among your top suppliers to see who is more motivated to help you achieve your own goal. And definitely the third piece, very, very important, is how do you help fund some of these? Because some of these suppliers may not have the capital and the asset base to implement these technologies, but if they are important for your goal, you have to come up with a way to work with them, to fund them, so make that, so collectively, scope 1, scope 2, scope 3, all of us are working together to achieve our sustainability goal. So suppliers ecosystem is very, very important to achieve the sustainability goals.
I think there's an astonishing amount of good advice in an astonishing short period of time there from all of you. So thank you very much indeed for that. Moving on to my final question, we've got just over 5 minutes left on this discussion. And Paul, I will start with you on this one, and you'll see why. And that is the role of government and governance when it comes to policies or incentives for achieving more sustainable manufacturing processes. Where do we feel government and governments have a role in helping to achieve manufacturing sustainability? And Paul, as you can see why, I'll start with you on that.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you, Neil. And so, from a policy perspective, we really would like to eliminate or reduce as much as we can from a policy perspective or directives, really outside of being more directional, but then to provide incentives for companies to be able to make sure that they're investing in their future by implementing sustainable activities. In Connecticut, we have what's called the Manufacturing Innovation Fund. It's a fund that's created by our legislature, and I serve as the board chair of that fund, and the board is made up of manufacturers. That's all designed to invest in our manufacturing sector to incentivize them to do the things the state wants them to do. And there's two things that we want all of our manufacturers to do. We want them to make great products, and we want them to hire people and provide them with life-changing careers. So the more that I can do to incent them to do that, and also how can I incent them to move towards the governor's vision of having a carbon-free Connecticut by 2040, and to be able to move initiatives that are going to be designed to do that. Now, listen, we need policy and we need regulation to make sure that we have guardrails so that we make sure that companies are acting in an ethical and straightforward manner. But more importantly, I think a government's role is to really provide this environment and climate where companies can come to us and say, we really want to do this. How can you help us do that? And then have us come and say, listen, here's how we can help you. We'll have these programs that we can use to do mutual investment. Everything that we do in Connecticut requires a matching investment. So we're both going to be combined stakeholders in making sure that companies are going to move forward in a sustainable way. Companies are going to grow. And as I said, we want them to make great products, and we want them to hire people and provide great career opportunities. And we want them to do that in a sustainable and environmentally friendly way as well. So we're providing the programmatic changes across the entire ecosystem that manufacturers can tap into for us to be able to achieve those goals. And so we're very, very vocal and outspoken about what those goals are, and then what our incentive programs that are in place to be able to support manufacturers and to be able to drive that. And we're really looking at incentives on the smaller manufacturers. Most of my programs are 300 employees or less, or 100 employees or less. I don't worry. The large companies are doing it because it's the right thing to do it. The smaller companies know they need to do it, but they're going to need a little bit of help. So government, I think, plays a role in providing incentives for companies to drive towards sustainability and environmental goals that are important to making sure that we continue to protect our planet.
Paul, thank you very much. Ashish, Shankar, if you forgive me, I will leave that question there, because I have had some questions in from the viewers which I would really like to get onto before we finish the panel. I'm sure you understand. First of all, a very official one, if you like. This is from James, just wanting to know best way to get in touch with any of you after this. Best way, reaching out on LinkedIn. Are you all happy with that?
That's correct.
Always
yes,
good.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
That's exactly what LinkedIn's for. So James, yep, reach out on LinkedIn. I'm sure they'll be happy to help. And secondly, from Becky Daybill. Thank you, Becky. And if all of you could try and tackle this in around a minute each, I would appreciate it. Becky's question is, how would you recommend extending a collaborative approach with suppliers and stakeholders to include strategic charity partnerships as part of ESG strategy? So how would you recommend that? If we can try and get that into a minute each, I'd be very, very grateful.
Yeah, I think from, really quickly, to really reach out to charities and nonprofits, I think we can kind of reverse it and have companies that provide incentives for their employees to get engaged with things that they feel very passionate about, and allow them to have the time to be able to do that. So give everybody, 2 or 3 days a year off, fully paid, to engage with charities or other nonprofit organizations for efforts that are going to help us move towards sustainability. So I think by supporting it, by saying to suppliers, you need to come meet us, I think having that outreach into the community by these companies will certainly help strengthen that ecosystem.
If I can add very quickly, is in addition to the Paul, is what I've seen working is if we have ERGs, like we have our employee resource group in terms of sustainability, if ERG can partner with the non-profit organization and charities, that's another way to interface, because then you have a power of the employees coming together. So Neil, a different thought, but I have seen it working in ERGs, helping into DEI and ESG into the charity organization. So just hopefully it helps, Becky.
One good practice I have also seen is focusing on the education and training, where organizations support the education and training and help on the innovations at the grassroots level. So these are the things I've practically seen bring in a lot of benefits, not only to the society, but also back to the organizations based on the grassroots innovations that we see in different countries.
Excellent. Again, 3 more fantastic examples of how we can work with charities or the non-profit sector. My word, we've covered a lot of ground in 45 minutes. I'm quite impressed how much we've managed to fit in. Thank you to all of you for joining us here at Manufacturing Digital Live. Really enjoyed our discussion. I'm sure the audience as well will have taken a great deal from it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Neil, for having us. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Very welcome. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, time for a very short break, and then we are back with our final keynote of the day. That is Industrial AI, current state and looking to the future, and that is coming up next.